We're here with Knesset Member Boaz Bismuth. He's a member of Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party, also former editor-in-chief of Israel and Hayom. Boaz, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Good morning. You put out a statement earlier this week saying that it is imperative that Gaza does not go back to being a territory controlled by terrorists. Both our soldiers fighting in Gaza and Israeli civilians are in agreement that this has to happen. It is imperative that we, as well as the leaders of the world, act accordingly. Boaz, tell me, in your view, who controls Gaza on the day after?
So first of all, you'll agree with me that is the most, how would I say, logical, straightforward statement one can have. I mean, who wants to have a Gaza Strip like on the 6th of October? Who would like to have a terrorist entity on our borders? I mean, who would like to risk the life of its civilians again? So this is obvious, and I think that everybody agrees, and I think that the international community agrees, and I think that the United States with President Biden agrees, and I think that the Palestinians were surprised, by the way. And when I say Palestinians, I speak also of the Palestinian Authority. I speak also of countries around us in the Middle East, are surprised by the support we're having by leaders, Western leaders in the world right now. So this is obvious. Now, I can talk to you about what we shall not have on the day after. We shall not have, of course, a terrorist entity. As I said, Israel will not occupy Gaza because it's none of our desire. And anyone that will not fight against terrorism or that will not support it, that will not support a demilitarized entity, will not be able to rule in Gaza. Yet, let me remind you that before we speak of the day after, we're in a war right now. So I don't think that it's the time exactly now to give you a proper definition or to draw to you the Gaza Strip in the day after, because the war is still going on. When the war will be over, I will be more adapted. It will be more convenient for me, or I will have more information to give you a straightforward answer. Right now, as war is going on right now, I can tell you what in Gaza Strip will not be. Exactly what will be, we'll see after. But one thing, something that is really important. The Gaza Strip, the day after, will be according to the interest and the security interest of the Israeli people.
So what's happening today in Gaza is a humanitarian disaster. You have well over 1 million Gazans that are displaced. And there's been calls this past week by ministers saying that they think that Gazan residents should be afforded the right to resettle elsewhere outside of the Gaza Strip. Can you speak to whether you think the Rafah border crossing should be open, and what's your view of the statements by your fellow ministers?
Okay, so first of all, when you mention a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, I agree with you. There is a huge humanitarian crisis in Gaza when I see that we still have our hostages over there. There is a huge humanitarian crisis in Gaza when I see that 2 kids, 10 months or 1-year-old and 4 years old, are still there. There is a huge humanitarian crisis in Gaza when you've got like 19 girls over there or women over there, and you know better than me the way they're treated. I mean, we're talking about women that were raped. I say it again, raped, abused. So yes, there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and I want the world to scream it, not to say it, but it's Israelis who are there. And where is the world to scream? Where are the human rights? Where are all those women's rights going in the streets now and cry to liberate those girls? Now concerning population of Gaza, let me tell you one thing. The difference between we and them is that when they come here, when they say they, because it can be, of course, the Hamas organization, but what can we say? There were also civilians who came. Civilians came here to Be'eri, to our towns, to our kibbutz, and abused, slaughtered, stole. I mean, this is reality. And although what happened to us, Israel will not change. We are acting according to international law. We respect life. Life is sacred for us. Before we attack, we tell civilians we are going to attack this building or this street. Please move. We do not target civilians, God forbid. And I would even say more than that. I know as I was in the Israeli army. If an Israeli soldier hurts, God forbid, a civilian, believe me, he might not sleep at night. When a terrorist comes here to Israel and he slaughters a baby, he calls his parents to celebrate. This is the difference. So please, no parallel. And humanitarian crisis in Gaza is because of Hamas. So you take all the casualties we had in Israel, you take the casualties in Gaza, you add them together, and you blame Hamas.
You can blame Hamas, and we blame Hamas here. That's no question about it. But you have a situation now where the IDF, in its operation, has destroyed much of the Gaza Strip, and it's not going to be possible for Gazan residents to have homes on the day after the war. So the question is, what happens to the Gazan population? Should they be afforded the right to leave the Gaza Strip?
I have the moral duty. I, like every member of our political sphere right now, whether you're right, left, secular, orthodox, any politicians in Israel, Zionist politician, has the obligation, the moral role, the moral duty, the moral obligation, as I said, to secure its population after the 7th of October. Now, you speak to me again about Gaza and about where will they go after the war. Right now, I'm asking you, where will Israeli go after the war? Yeah, can they go back to their homes after the war if you've got a terrorist entity? Now, terrorism is something that you have to handle. Terrorism is something that you have to fight. Terrorism is something you have to eliminate. And by the way, the world has said it. I'm quoting the world when the world went and justly to fight Al Qaeda or the Daesh, ISIS. So meaning we're doing now a war that is a war for all the world. And let me tell you something that nobody emphasized on. This war in Gaza, by the way, that we're doing is also good for the Palestinians in Gaza. Because do you think, I'm asking you, do you think that the population in Gaza deserve, although 65% or more voted for Hamas in the elections in 2006, but do you think that today, after the atrocities of the 7th of October, do you think Gaza population or any population should live under the rule of Hamas? Now, war is not a beautiful thing. I mean, if it would have been, we would have known it, believe me. Now, what can we do in order to eliminate Hamas? Hamas that is using Gaza population as human shield makes the target more difficult. This is why the war is going to be long, because we're going to bring back our hostages, eliminate Hamas, but also secure the maximum, the life of the Gazawi population. We respect life, we respect civilians, and this is why the war is long. Because also soldiers of us, our soldiers, IDF soldiers are dying because we're going in a war that it wants to prevent killing civilians. You know, very easy. You send a plane, you send a missile, and you finish a building. But when you send a soldier inside, it's in order to make sure that the civilian doesn't die. And you know, many times our soldiers don't come back home. So this is Israel. So moral lessons we don't have to get from anyone, believe me, right now.
Boaz, I've been speaking to some members of the reserves that were recently released, and they said that early on in the war that they were fighting full stop and had the full support of all the branches of the military. And yet they say that as the weeks progressed, that they felt more and more like there were restrictions and less support from the Air Force and others to fight. And they basically said, I had one reservist tell me that he was fighting, felt like he was fighting with his hands behind his back. Can you speak a little bit to whether there are considerations regarding pleasing the Americans and different considerations that they have that might be restricting the speed and the power with which reservists and others are fighting inside the Gaza Strip?
First of all, I wouldn't speak of pleasing because it's a war right now. People are dying, so nobody tries to please anyone. What we do right now is doing our duty, meaning eliminating a terrorist movement. And this is important, and bringing back our hostages, including women and kids. We still have kids over there. Now, concerning the soldiers, our soldiers are brave. Our soldiers, I mean, the spirit, the soul, the way they, I mean, we discovered right now that we have an amazing generation of soldiers. And these ones are going to win. And when I say the Israeli army, it's all ranked from the simple soldier who joined the army just a few months or weeks ago to the chief of staff. So all of them, a lot of respect. Now, nothing, concerning your question, nothing was changed. I mean, all the, how would I say, the war by itself, nobody has given an order to lower the Israel way of conducting the war. And I would even say something more. I think that you do not have a lot of spots in the Gaza Strip right now where IDF is not operating. And therefore, this saying that Israel, on the contrary, is functioning or is lowering the intensity of fighting is totally untrue.
You talked a little bit about Israelis that are not in their homes around the Gaza Strip, but you also have tens of thousands of Israelis that have been evacuated from their homes around the northern border. We've seen that the border has been intensifying over the past several weeks, and we saw that the United States sent their energy envoy, Amos Hochstein, who helped negotiate the return of a natural gas reserve over to Lebanon prior to the war. He's been in the region. They're trying to reach some kind of a diplomatic solution. Can you tell me, what do you think are the prospects of reaching a real diplomatic solution to push Hezbollah back north of Litani River, or do you think that a war with Hezbollah like we see in the south is inevitable?
First of all, I'm happy that you're asking me this question. I'll tell you why. A few days ago, I met people from Shlomi. I visited also Shlomi up in the north, like 600 meters, I think, from the border with Lebanon. 9,500, population of 9,500 people usually. Today you've got less than 500. City in Israel, by the way, where the only business that functions is a supermarket that is open for like 3 hours. This is something that a country, a state, a sovereign state like Israel cannot accept. You cannot accept such a situation. Yet, I cannot also expect a population, an Israeli civilian, living under the threat of terrorist group, in this case Hezbollah. You mentioned the American envoy. I must say that America is a true friend of Israel, and I salute all the efforts America is doing, and the big support, as I said before, of the American administration, and also the American people towards us. But concerning the North, I think it has to be obvious. What happened in the south will not happen in the north, meaning living under the threat of a terrorist entity will not be accepted. And by the way, personally, I can also be very surprised. As much as I remember, we had an agreement with Lebanon concerning the Gaza, as you mentioned, but a few months ago. I don't know, it wasn't that, it's kind of recent. Maybe last year, was it? Yeah, last year. And I thought that this agreement was supposed to strengthen the stability in the region. So you see, we're talking of the Middle East. We can't take any chances. The life of our civilians today is the most important thing, for me, the life, because Israel, as you know, Israel is a place where Jews can live in security. And if the state of Israel cannot secure its citizens, where do you want us to go? Tell me.
Boaz, last week amidst the fighting, the Supreme Court of Israel ruled that the court had the power to overturn basic laws. It also overruled by a slim majority of 8-7 a law that the coalition passed, which would strike down the court's ability to cancel legislation on the arbitrary basis of reasonableness. What do you think about the timing of this ruling by the Supreme Court, and where do you think that the coalition that puts so much stock into seeing judicial reform move forward, where does the coalition go with that next?
Not interesting. Not interesting right now, because only the war interests me, because we're at war. Soldiers are dying right now. You know, you've got tanks in Israel, in Gaza Strip, you've got a tank. Or inside the tank, you've got one that's supposed to reform and one that doesn't like the reform. Should we speak about it right now? Not interesting. But as you asked me the question, I will tell you, this is not the moment. I mean, we have seen what it has done to our society in the last year before the war. We saw the demonstrations. We saw some of us were torn. And by the way, the score, as you mentioned, 8-7, means that if 7 Supreme Court judges thought that what we did was okay, that there was no dictatorship. This is what it proves. But it's not interesting right now. In the tank, you've got this one that supported the reform, and I salute him, I embrace him, I love him. And you've got this one that doesn't like the reform, that demonstrated against. I salute him, I embrace him, I love him. Israel today is united. Reform, not interesting. War, very interesting. Bringing back the hostages, the most interesting. Eliminating Hamas, very, 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 the most interesting.
Boaz Bismuth, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.